Don't you know it's all about the base? About the base, about the base. It's no trouble. Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. So my last video was around my Beast Claw Raiders, and I had a few comments about the bases and how I did them with the snow and the rocks. So I thought in today's video I'd show you exactly how I do them, as I'm busy finishing off some of the models I need to do anyway. Next you'll see how to do the snow bases, but if you stay till the end there's a little sneak preview of the gaming table, and it's pretty much almost finished, and I should be getting that video up this weekend, assuming that the weather stays okay and I manage to get it painted. So thanks for watching. I'll let you watch the tutorial now and stay to the end to see the gaming table. So we start with the cork tiles. This is just normal cork tile I picked up from a local DIY store, and we basically just break a few chunks off. And as you can see here, I'll just, oops, if I can find the camera, you can see it just gives a kind of a ragged edge to it there, so it helps to make it look a little bit like rocks. And all we're doing is we're trying to make it look less uniform and no kind of flat sides. Don't worry about how accurate you are with snapping bits off. The idea is that the rougher the better, really. So that's a good enough start for one part, and we know that he's only got one, oops, getting shot. We know he's only got one front leg standing and the two back ones here. So we'll maybe move that one to the back there and angle it so it picks up the 2 feet, and we know we have to have something around the front here. So next stage then is we remove the model, and here we take a super glue. I like to use a gel super glue. Gorilla Glue is actually, I find Gorilla Glue really good. People say it's really expensive, but actually when you see that there's 15 grams of glue in here, some of the other stuff you only get maybe sort of 2 or 3 grams. So it's definitely worth checking, because the size of the bottle isn't always an indication of just how much glue you get in. So give that a bit of a shape. I like to give it a tap as well on the top, and we're just going to give it a couple of little dots of the gel glue, and then glue it back into place. And it's just worth just double checking that we're still covering where the model needs to be. That's fine, and we'll do the same with the other parts. Okay, so once that super glue is dry, the next stage is to get the PVA glue, and we're just going to dot it around here, a little bit on there. And remember, majority of this is going to be covered in snow, so it's not kind of imperative that it's accurate, but if you miss any bits with the snow, it just means that you've got a good base behind it. So then get an old brush. I just use these ones that I bought. I think I got them from from a pound store, where I got like a pack of sort of 25 random cheap brushes. Not much good for painting, but ideal for just kind of spreading glue. And all we do is we just move the glue around, make sure you get into everywhere. So I'll finish off doing this, and then I'll show you the next stage of putting the sand on. So just sprinkle sand over the entire base. Make sure you don't miss any of the bits where we've put PVA glue. Okay, that's pretty well covered. So then all we do is we just give it a little tap just to shake off any loose pieces, and also just run your thumb around the edge, and it just gives a nice clean edge to the base. Right, the next stage then, so I've primed it in grey there. I always like to prime models and bases and everything in grey. I think it just gives you that good mid-tone to work from, either to lighten up or to darken down. But yep, prime it. I've just used a Halford's automotive spray, so I don't use anything too expensive. But next stage now is just to get those base colours on. For that, I'm going to be using Citadel's Goldthorpe Brown, or Goldthorpe Brown I should say. It tends to take quite a... You don't want it too thin because it soaks into the sand. But you also don't want it too thick, otherwise it obscures the texture of the sand. So it's just finding that midpoint. But I tend to just get a little bit of water on my brush, a little bit of paint in the lid there, and just give it a bit of a mix. Don't do this for models. I only do it for when I'm painting these bases like this. Don't worry about going over the edges because that is all going to be that same colour too. You have to do probably 2, maybe 3 coats around the rim of it, but that's the first coat. We'll leave that to dry, and we'll pop a second coat around the edge. Okay, so once that the Goldthorpe brown is dry, we're going to paint the rock areas now. And the first colour we're going to use is Crick's Bane Base, and this is a P3 from Privateer Press. Obviously you can use any colours you want, any colours that will match your army or will convey the bases you want. Maybe you want kind of like sort of lighter coloured rocks or whatever, but basically this is a very kind of a greeny grey colour, so anything you've got that will match is a perfect base. As you can see there, it's a little bit thinner as it goes on, but we're just going to paint it on. Again, we don't want it to be too thick because the reason we've used the cork is to give us a bit of texture, and it looks really good when it's all dry brushed. So we just want to make sure we get a good coating. Don't stress too much about if you go over the edge as well onto the to the brown part or the sand, whatever colour you painted it, because remember it's going to get covered in the snow. So next stage now, once that initial base coat's dry, is I'm going to apply a dry brush over the top of the rocks. And for this I'm going to use a Crick's Bane highlight, and again that is from the P3 range. And all you want to do is very lightly over all of the rock is just build up a bit of a highlight to it. So I don't know if you can see this on camera, but it's starting to kind of just take away that flat colour and build up. Especially focus around the edges of the rocks, and some of the texture of the cork will pick up as well. So straight after that we are going to put an extra highlight onto it with a dry brush, and this time we use another GW paint. This one is Celestra Grey. Again, do exactly what you did with the last colour. This time it's just lightening it up that a little bit further. Again, focusing on the edges just to give some definition to the rocks. Next stage now is to wash the entire base with an Agrax Earthshade. This will just help to blend some of it in and give a little bit of definition again. No need to be too careful with this. Again, just thin it down with a little bit of water, and you can see it starts to fall into some of the gaps in the cork. It smooths out any brush strokes that you had when you were dry brushing, and it just sort of starts to tie the whole thing together. Again, make sure you get right into the corners of the rocks, because that's the part where it would obviously be the darkest. So you want some of the wash to pool up in there. And now once that's done, again we just leave it to dry, and this is where we start to put the snow onto the base. The next stage now is to mix up your snow mix. So what I like to do is I like to use roughly a 50-50 mix of PVA glue and white acrylic paint. So what we'll do is we'll put some PVA into a tub, and we put roughly the same amount of white acrylic paint. And then what we want to do is we're going to add the snow basing material and keep mixing it until we roughly get the consistency of toothpaste. So you want that kind of thick, spreadable kind of paste. So just put a bit in and mix it up, and just gradually add your snow mix until you get the right consistency. And it's worth doing all of your bases together so that when you make this mixture up, you can make enough to do them all at once, and then you get them all the same texture. And that's probably the best way to do it. Tiny bit more, I think, and then that should see us done. What you end up with is something that looks a bit like that. It's kind of have that very thick texture. The peaks there are kind of still staying up there, and that's perfect just for spreading around on your base. So one thing to think of is which direction your model is going to be facing. So we know on this one we placed that little rock at the front there next to its front leg. So it's going to be facing in that direction. and to base all of your bases with snow as if they're all facing in the same direction. So for my models, I have mine so that the snow is always coming from one direction. So it's coming from the front of the model, across the back. So when you get around to the sides here, there's patches where there's no snow gathered because of the direction of the snow. So we'll do the same with this one, and just using a little stick, all we want to do is we want to just put it on. So what we're doing is the front here will be covered with snow where it's been blowing up against the front edge of those rocks. Don't worry too much about how much you've got on it, it's all going to be smoothed out later on. There'd be a bit of a build up here on the front of that rock. Obviously around here there isn't going to be much, there's going to be some in the patch here, but it wouldn't be blown in both directions building up the back of that. So let's ignore that part for now. We take some more and we come around the front of this rock, and let me just get that on there. You can see where it's starting to build up here. The same here as well, there's going to be a build up around the front of this rock. You can always drag it up the front of the rocks as well a little bit, it takes kind of the stark edges away from the rocks and looks quite good. Now there's nothing stopping you, because obviously snow would kind of gather. You can always drag a little bit around up onto the front there. We'd probably have a little bit piled up in that gap there a little bit. I'll just drag it around there. So I haven't been too careful, I've just kind of slopped it on there a little bit. So the next stage now is just take one of these cheap brushes that you don't mind wasting, wet the brush, and all we're going to do is we're just going to smooth it out a little bit using the wet brush and drag it around a little bit. Now the fibres of the little snow fibres will kind of stick to the brush, or they'll drag about. But all we're trying to do is make it look slightly more even, slightly more natural. And it's going to look a little bit weird at first. You're going to wonder what on earth you've done, because I certainly panicked the first time I did this. But by that point it was a bit late. However, once it dries out, remember the glue is going to kind of settle down a little bit. The paint's going to dry out, and what you'll find is it'll look a lot drier texture once you're finished. So you can see, let me just get that on shot there, turn it around, but you can see here where I haven't sort of picked up the snow too much. Very lightly just brush across it so it gets a little bit of a white finish, like here on the back as well. And obviously there's a bit of a gap there, and that's why we need to make sure we do that kind of sand texture, so at least it doesn't look like a flat base. But that's how the snow goes on. So that's how the snow goes on, and the next stage really is just to leave it to dry. Now's a good time, go and get yourself a cup of coffee, chill out for a bit, because this takes quite a while. Okay guys, so once this is dry, I'll come back and I'll show you how it's dried out. And there we have it folks, there's the finished base. So I'm not sure if you'd be able to see on camera, I'll try and see if I can get in a bit closer. That's kind of flattened out a little bit as it's dried, and you might be able to see sort of some of the texture to the snow now as the PVA glue subsided a little bit, and you're starting to see the fibre kind of the snow basing material. So that's where our model, when he's all painted, will sit. And just to give you an idea, some things you can also do, I've got one of my Yetis here, where I've put one of the I've just put a twig, a bit of stick just on the base as well. Obviously for the size of the model it makes it look like a fallen tree or a bit of a log, and I've just done the same thing and covered that over with a bit of snow when I've been basing it, so you can get some very nice effect. And you can see there as well on the base just how it's sort of dried out quite with a bit of texture to it, so it doesn't just look like very smooth snow. Just gives it a little bit of extra something, but there's still quite a bit of the rock showing, just to give some contrast. And that's how I do my snow bases, guys. I'm sure there's other ways to do them as well. I'm sure some people have better ways or different ways, but that's what I do. It's dead quick, it's dead easy, and I've found it works for me. and certainly adding the white paint seems to ensure that there's no discoloration over time. So here's a bit of a sneak peek for you guys, the dedicated few who watch my daily videos. This is the table, so from a construction point of view it's all finished now. As you can see, there's just sort of filled in where the screw holes were, just waiting for that to dry, sanded down, and then it's all going to get a coat of black paint. Here I've put one of my gaming mats on the top there as well, just so you can see, and from a measurement point of view I think I've made it pretty much spot on there. Not bad a fit at all, if I do say so myself. And a late addition is I've decided to cover the top of it in these cork tiles, so this just gives it a nicer surface. This will all be painted as well, but it just gives it a bit of a smoother surface to game on, and it deadens any sound as well for rolling dice on here. So bit of a sneak peek, like I say, for the dedicated viewers of the Daily Show, but I can't wait to show you the full video of how I made it. Okay guys.